and Daya, he gives the kripa. So, and I was very fortunate that in one of that video, I found the Krishna Katham with a Bindu group. So in that group, immediately I could find your number, and I tried to hit a stone. Like if it is reaching that other end, then I would be very grateful by Lord's great help or mercy. I can say that I got your association. And once
Anyway,
again,
let's see what you think about it after today. We have a pretty startling subject in front of us today, which
yeah,
maybe makes some devotees disturbed. I kind of hope so, anyway.
yeah, very grateful for him. Thank you.
Sometimes being disturbed is important in Krishna consciousness. It's nice to see you, Avinash, here. Hare Krishna. Well, what do you think, Jaguar? Should we wait another minute or two? I was thinking that Leela Purushottam would probably be here, maybe some others, but should we go ahead and start?
Yeah, maybe he'll show up in a couple minutes.
Okay. Gora Draganya Gana Gocha Goloruharam Goranga Gudatama Gopyata Kolpa Briksham Gopalagadharatidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam Namami Uttama Adama Kichuna Bachila Jachi Adileka Kola Kahe Premananda Emona Goranga Hridoya Dariya Bola Bhaja Goranga Kaha Goranga Laha Gorangera Namare Jai Jana Goranga Bhaje Se Hoya Mara Pranare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yashaiva Padambuja Bhakti Labhya Prema-bhakti-candrika Parama Pumata Tasmai Jagan Mangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Madgavirapi Gopala Sri Kriyat Kripaya Jari Tadaiva Sambhaya Pigva Rishi Gustat Priya Janaha Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupaka Gopala Raghunathabda Brajabala Vapahimam Panchakalpatarubhishcha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Om Namaha Jai Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we can recite this verse together from Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's prayers from Narottam Das Thakur. There was something really bugging me about this verse. This word tasmai in the last line. I looked up in the Sanskrit, and actually there was some mistake. And popularly, they have this word, the last line, tasmai namo namaha srinatamaya, which is too many syllables. So anyway, I looked in the Sanskrit, and it's just like it is here. We can recite together. Shri Krishna Nama Amrita Varshi Vaktra Chandra Prabhad Vasta Tumo Buraya Gauranga Deva Anucharaya Namo Namah Shila Narottamaya. Again and again I offer my obeisances unto Srila Narottam Das Thakur. He is indeed a true follower of Lord Gauranga Dev. The nectarian shower of the holy name radiating from the moon of his mouth destroys the darkness of ignorance. So we're continuing with our discussion on Prema-bhakti-candrika, and Abhinash and maybe some others who are just starting here. I think Mukunda's here now too. Nice to see you, Prabhuji. We're on the fourth song of Narottam Das Thakur, the fourth section, depending on how you divide it. And we're on the second stanza of that. And let's look back a little bit. This new song that we're working on now, which just we're starting on, is called Yugala Bhajan Nishta, Undivided Service of the Divine Couple. And in our last session, we read the first verse, very nice verse. I've been reading this every day for Kartik. Anarkata anavyata nahi jena janatata tomara charana smriti saje avirata abhikal tuya guna kalakal gai jena satira samaje. Wherever there are discussions on mundane topics, pains and pleasures, may I restrain myself from going there. Let the remembrance of your lotus feet decorate my heart. May I properly chant your transcendental qualities unceasingly in the society of devotees. So this song now, he's speaking about what is Yugala Bhajan, Yugala Bhajan Nishtha. What does it mean to be Nishtha or fixed in Yugala Bhajan, in worshiping Shri Radha and Krishna? And so we had that as our last one. And this is today's verse, which I titled Chanting, Give Up All Else. Or else. Anya brata, anya dana, nahi karun vastu jagyana, anya seva, anya deva puja. Haha Krishna boli boli, bedana ananda kori, mani mora nahi jena duja. He says, anya brata, anya dana, nahi karun vastu jnana. He says, I'm not going to give any importance to any other bratas, any other charity. Nahi karun vastu jnana. I'm not even going to consider vastu jnana, any of these other things. Nahi karun vastu jnana. Anya seva, anya deva puja. No other service, no other deva to worship. Haha Krishna boli boli. I'm just going to call out Vedana Ananda Kori with great ecstasy. Haha Krishna boli boli, just calling out again and again to Krishna. Mani mora nahi jena duja. That this is all that I want. I don't have any other, I have no other duja, I have no other thought about this. This is all that I want. Now, this is a pretty radical thing in front of us. And Narottam Das Thakur is being wonderful to speak to us about what is Sudha Bhakti, what is Sudha Bhajan. And we're going to go on a little journey with this today. And as I said, I'm not really sure if I hope it's not going to disturb anybody, if I hope it's going to disturb some people. So first of all, Narottam, he mentions in this verse what should be given up. And he's indicating by saying, Haha Krishna, he's indicating the greatest ecstasy, Vedana Ananda Kori. This is the greatest ecstasy in my heart, just calling out to Krishna, but calling out to Krishna in a mood that I'm giving up anya brata, anya dana, nahi korobastagana, anya seva, anya deva puja. I'm giving up all these other things, all these other vows. Vaishnavas, they should give up these things which are connected with different gods and goddesses other than our Vaishnava vows, like Ekadasi, like Kartik Brata, Janmashtami, Radhastami, Ram Navami, different days like that. Those things which we do, and in the proper way. So in our last session, Jaigor shared this wonderful verse with us from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Swanima Dasakam, verse 7, which I'll go ahead and post here on the board, which gives a similar mood to what Narottam Das Thakur is teaching us in this verse. Naivai kunte rajena chabishaye karaye mama ratir nirvane mokshe mama mater ihaste kshanamapi brajanandada anyadada Harivilasitam bhavanamapi katanchim mam radhan vaya virahitam no sukhayati. He said, Navaikunte Rajinaja. I'm not interested in living in Vaikuntha. I'm not interested in any Vishai of becoming a king, getting any kinds of sense gratification in this material world. Nirvane mokshe. I don't care for impersonalistic liberation. Not even mama mata ihaste kshanam. Kshanam means just for a moment. Kshanamapi, not even for 1 second. But I'm desiring this pastimes of Krishna and Braj, Harivilasitam Pavanamapi, which purify everyone. This is what I want. Brajana Dada. I want to be given this Anya Dada. This is the only thing that I want. Because Krishna is Virahitam no Sukhayati. He's to worship Radharani and Krishna this way. That's the only giver of joy. Also, in our last session, we looked at this verse from Manasiksha, Raghunath Das Goswami. We'll just look at this again real quick. Dharmam na dharmam shuti gana niruktam kilakuru praje radha krishna prachura paricharyam ihatanu sachi sunam nandi svarapati sutatve guruvaram kunda prestatve Smara Parama Jashram Nanumana. My dear mind, Nadharmam Nadharmam Shutigana Niruptam Kilakuru. Don't get absorbed in dharma and pious activities or adharma, getting all freaked out about people who are bad. Shutigana Niruptam, all these things which are described in the Vedic literatures. Just worship Radha Krishna and Braj. Sachi Sunam Nandishvara Patisutatve Guruvanam, and understand that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Sachi Suna. He's Nandishvara Pati. He's the Lord of Braj. He's the Lord of Nanda Maharaj. He's the son of Nanda Maharaj. And understand that my Gurudev is Mukunda Preshta. He's very, very dear to Mukunda Krishna. This is what we should be focused on. And this is a very, very difficult thing for us to discuss. We could speak on this topic, I think, for months and years. It's an astonishing thing. If you study the teachings of Srila Prabhupada, there's at least one letter that I know of where Srila Prabhupada speaks of, actually several places, where he says, we are not interested in vegetarianism. We are not vegetarian. Stick that in your mouth and digest that. We are not vegetarian. We are Krishnarian. He said, we take Krishna prasadam. We're not interested in vegetarianism or non-vegetarianism. In another letter, Srila Prabhupada said, we are not interested, we are neither for nor against abortion. That's a real shock. Prabhupada said, we are not against abortion. It's not in a political way. What we are for is Krishna consciousness. And we should understand that in a very, very deep way. I remember some years ago, I was with Raghunath Maharaj, and we were in Jagannath Puri, and we were invited for a Tirabhav festival, disappearance festival for one of the acharyas in the Gaudiya Math. And so I was very happy to get association with Maharaj and to go there. And we went, and somehow I got to be with the senior devotees. And we took prasadam with a group of sannyasis and senior devotees from different Gaudiya Maths. And there was an argument going on while we were there. And one of the senior devotees who was there, he was saying that it's very important. We should propagate vegetarianism, and we should speak out against abortion. And the current acharya in the Gaudiya Math, who was there at the time, was chastising him. So we're not interested in this, and this is a deviation. And indeed, without mentioning any names, that particular acharya who was propagating vegetarianism and anti-abortion, later on there was a big scandal, and he's no longer having that position. So we don't wish him anything ill, But the point is that we want to progress in bhakti. We want to progress in Sudha bhakti. And to understand Sudha bhakti is not an easy thing. So let's travel a little bit on this discussion. As I promised today, I want to disturb everybody's mind. Let's look at some statements from our acharyas. This is one of my favorite verses. This is from Prema-bhakti-candrika. It's quoted by Jiva Goswami in Bhakti Sandarbha, also quoted by Baladev in some of his commentaries, and by, I think it's Sanatana Goswami's Hari Bhakti Vilas, and also Jaiva Dharma Bhakti Vinod quotes it. Manimitam kritam papam api dharmaya kalpate. Someone who does some sin, but manimitam kritam, that pap is done for me, api dharmaya kalpate. That pap becomes dharma, kalpate. But mama nadritya dharmopi. If someone does dharma, but mama nadritya, they neglect me, then papam shanmat prabhavata. Their dharma turns into pap. Very, very difficult thing to understand. Abhinash, very difficult, especially for persons who come from a Hindu background. Because in Hinduism, in all different religions, we're taught that we should be pious, that we should practice dharma. But in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Raghunath Das Goswami is saying, the dharmam adharmam, shruti ganam niruptam, that don't worry about this dharma or adharma. Again, in Skanda Purana, it said, dharmo bhavati dharmo pi kripto bhaktaishtava chuta papam bhavati dharmo pi tava bhaktai krito hare. The adharma becomes dharma when your devotees do it. When Yudhishthira Maharaj told a lie, that lie became piety because it was bhakti, he was doing on behalf of Krishna. And dharma becomes sin when performed by non-devotees. A very, very deep subject matter. This is a conclusion of Krishna's words in Bhagavad Gita, where, this is your comment, where Krishna says, Sarva dharmam parityagya, give up all types of dharma. He doesn't say give up all types of sin. He doesn't say sarva papa parityagya. He says sarva dharman parityagya. That's a very, very difficult thing to understand, especially amongst pious people. So this is what Narottam Das Thakur is stressing in this verse today. He's saying that if we want to do this bhajan for Radha Krishna, then Anya Deva, Anya Brata, Anya Dana, we have to give up all other Bratas, all other Dana. Actually, I wouldn't say you have to give this thing up. We should understand this thing. Because again, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that acts of charity and piousness are never to be given up. They're important things, and we always want to encourage people to be pious. We like to encourage people to be vegetarian, but our purpose is not vegetarianism. We like to encourage people to have consciousness and understand that the soul and the body is life. And if we kill a baby in the womb, it's a very, very sinful thing. So let's look at some other statements. Here's a couple of verses from Skanda Purana. Sakarta sarva dharmanam bhakto yes tava keshava. Sakarta sarva papanam yona bhaktas tava chuta. O Keshava, O Krishna, one who's your devotee, Sakarta, that person, he's done sarva dharmanam bhakta. He's done all types of dharma. While someone who's not your devotee, is sarva papanam. He's done all types of sinful activities. Again in Skanda Purana. Papam bhavati dharmo pi tava bhakta kritam hare nisesha karma kartava pyabhokto nadake patet. Even the sinful activities committed by devotees are considered to be dharma. But someone who's an abhakta, a non-devotee, whatever karma, whatever activities, religious activities they perform are useless, nadake patet. Still they go to hell. So, very big subject for us today, how to understand this topic. Things are not always what they seem. The Mahabharata is an interesting book. It's a wonderful book. It's full of great stories. And the Bhagavad Gita is the heart of the Mahabharata. But if you've been studying Srimad Bhagavatam for some years, and you're beginning to understand the purpose of the Bhagavatam, you're beginning to understand the purpose of our Gaudiya literatures and our acharyas in the line of Mahaprabhu, then when you read Mahabharata, it comes across like a lot of action stories, a lot of people being killed, a lot of sex life, and really not very much stress at all in bhakti. So then what is the purpose of the Mahabharata? If you consider the Mahabharata carefully, the Mahabharata is just practically a series of shocking stories that are all about Dharma, but they're stories to shock people into understanding what is real Dharma. And then that real Dharma is given in the essence in the Bhagavad Gita, in the final conclusion of the Gita, where Krishna said, Sarva Dharma Paritya. In the Karna Parva, chapter 3 of the Mahabharata, there's a story about a great rishi. His name was Kaushika. Kaushika he didn't have a lot of shastric knowledge. He was very simple, but he had a lot of power because he'd made a vow that I'll always tell the truth. And he became famous as someone who never told a lie. And one day, some innocent people came running through his ashram in the forest. Help us, help us. Some dacoits are chasing us. And Kaushika said, yes, you can hide right here. And they hid. And then those gundas, the dacoits, came there, looking to rob and kill those people. And they went to Kaushika and they asked, oh, Sadhu, where did those people go? And then Kaushika, he'd always promised, I'll never tell a lie. So Kaushika told him, oh, they're just right over there. And then those thieves, they caught those persons and they took their wealth and they killed them. And because of that, Kaushika went to hell for telling the truth. This is one of the stories in the Mahabharata which twist our head up because truth is a very, very important thing. Krishna stresses that in Bhagavad Gita also. But what is real truth? What is real Dharma? So in this verse, Narottam Das Thakur is telling us, Anya Vrata, Anya Dana, Nahi Karam Vastu Gyan. I'm not even going to consider Anya Vrata, Anya Dana, any other type of vratas, any other type of charity, Anya Seva, Anya Deva Puja, any other types of service, any other worship of any devas or devis. I'm just going to chant in ecstasy. Vedana Ananda Kori Haha Krishna Boli Boli. I'm just going to cry and chant Hare Krishna in ecstasy. So when we speak about this, I'm going to give all of you a little bit of a stomach ache maybe. We should understand what is the difference between bhakti and what Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes as bhakti unmukhi sukriti. And there's a difference. Giriraj Maharaj was telling a story about how the devotees were, and I actually have this over here too. He was speaking about a lecture or about an occasion with Srila Prabhupada in Amritsar. Once with Srila Prabhupada in Amritsar, Jamuna Devi read to him from the newly published Nectar Devotion, which speaks about Ekadasi. Ekadasi, which comes twice a month on the 11th day of the moon, both waning and waxing. On that day, all the devotees remain fasting throughout the night and continuously chant the glories of the Lord. Then Jamuna asked Srila Prabhupada, should we also observe Ekadasi like that? And Srila Prabhupada replied, no. We have too much service to do for Krishna. So when Narottam Das Thakur here is saying, he's speaking about Anya Brata, Anya Dana, Anya Seva, Anya Deva Puja, How do we understand this? This is a very, very sensitive subject. Many times, some of you may have heard me speak about Ekadasi and how if you ask most devotees, it's a kind of exercise I've done many times with devotees, asking them, what is the most important Ekadasi of the year? And pretty much every time devotees, they raise their hand and they say that it's Pandava Nirjala Ekadasi. That's the most important Ekadasi. And why is it, I asked them, why is it the most important Ekadasi? And they reply, because that Ekadasi, you get the benefit of all the other Ekadasis. And I reply, no, that's wrong. Pandava Nirjala Ekadasi especially is for poppies. And it's not actually mentioned by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, nor is it stressed in Hari Bhakti Vilas. Of all the different Ekadasis in terms of Mahaprabhu's teaching in Hari Bhakti Vilas, we hear about Uttana Ekadasi. Let me share this with you. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 15, text 36, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami speaks about how Mahaprabhu and his associates were observing things in Puri. Ei mata ratha yatra ada dipavali, uttana dwadasi yatra dekila sakali. That Mahaprabhu and his associates, dekila sakali, they were observing all the different festivals in Puri, including Prabhupada notes Rasa Yatra, it says here, Ada Dipavali, and Uttana Dwadasi. Uttana Dwadasi means the Dwadasi after Uttana Ekadasi. It means Uttana Ekadasi. Prabhupada comments, the Dipavali festival takes place on the dark moon night in the month of Kartik, October, November. The Rasa Yatra, or Ras dancing of Krishna, takes place in the full moon night of the same month. Uttana Dwadasi takes place after Ekadasi, and the waxing fortnight of the moon in the same month. All the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu participated in all these festivals. So for devotees, for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, the most important Ekadasi for us is Uttana Ekadasi. Now, Ekadasi is very important, but why do we observe Ekadasi? I've asked this question to many devotees also, and some of the answers that I've gotten back are very interesting. Some of them have said, which I found a little shocking, that the Papa Purush resides in grains, and it's because of that reason that we fast on Ekadasi. That's partially correct. And Shastra does describe, Padma Purana and Skanda Purana both describe how the Papa Purush, it's also quoted in Hari Bhakti Vilas, the Papa Purush resides in grains on Ekadasi. But in Hari Bhakti Vilas and other places in our Gaudiya literatures, and I wrote an article about this some years ago, if someone's interested, I could give some more verses and pramanas about it, describe that if someone ever thinks that prasadam has become contaminated, you'll go to hell. How is it possible that prasadam, which is non-different from Krishna, which is wholly pure, and we recite this prayer every time before we take prasadam, Mahaprasadi Govinde Nama Brahmani Vaishnave Swapa Punya Vatam Rajan Visvasa Naiva Jayate, that for someone who doesn't have proper faith, they don't have faith in the purity of Mahaprasad, of the holy name, or the Vaishnavas. Mahaprasad is always pure. And it's for that reason that in Jagannath Puri, inside the temple, I'm told, I haven't been there, but inside the temple, there's a deity of the Papa Purush, sin personified, tied up with ropes, because the Papa Purush has no place with Jagannath Mahaprasad. So then why do we fast from prasadam grains on Ekadasi? The simple answer is because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu requested his mother. And because that's Madhava Titi, in the language of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that Ekadasi day is the day of Krishna. And we observe that Ekadasi for the purpose of bhakti. And therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is told Sanatana Goswami in Madhya Lila chapter 24 of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Eshabi Vidhi Tyag, Avidha Karana, Akarane Dosha, Kaili Bhakti Lambana, that you should speak about the importance of Ekadasi and how you should avoid Bida Ekadasi, or Ekadasi which is not pure, when the Ekadasi doesn't begin at the proper time. It's a mixed Ekadasi, therefore we have Mahadwadasi, and we observe the next day. And he says you should also observe the dosha, you should speak about the dosha, the fault of someone not observing Ekadasi. One should be very careful as far as these items are concerned. If one's not careful, one will be negligent in executing devotional service. So Ekadasi is very important. And when Narottam Das Thakur says that Anya Brata, Anya Dana, that I'm giving up all these other bratas and different charities, he's not speaking about Ekadasi. We observe Ekadasi because Ekadasi gives us bhakti. It's described in the Hari Bhakti Vilas in the 12th chapter. There's many, many beautiful verses speaking about Ekadasi. And one of them quotes Vaishnava Tantra. Ekadasi Mahapunya Vishnu Isa Shibalava Tashyam Upasito Yastu Vadasyam Pujayad Dharim Tashapapani Nashyanti Vishnu Bhaktas Chajayate. That this Ekadasi day, it's Mahapunya. It's not just a punya or a pious day, but it's Mahapunya because Vishnu is Sashya Vallabha. It's very, very dear, Vallabha, to Lord Vishnu. Tashim Upasito Yastu Dvadasyam Pujayad Dharim. Anybody who fasts on Ekadasi and then serves Krishna on the Dwadasi, which traditionally means you don't sleep all night on Ekadasi, and you don't sleep the next day either because you're doing service on the Dwadasi. That person, Tasya Papani Nashyanti Vishnu Bhaktas Chajayate, they'll become free of all types of sin. But that's not what's so important to us. What's important to us is Vishnu Bhaktas Chajayate, is that by observing Ekadasi, we obtain devotion to the Lord. This is our purpose, not just some punya dana to get some punya or something, but we do this because we want to get bhakti. And therefore, there's a nice verse in the Tattva Sagar that describes it, that these vows, this Anya Brata that Narottam Das Thakur is speaking about, it's not speaking about our Vaishnava Brata. Ekadasim Parityagya Yo Navyavitam Upasate Sankarasta Mahabratnam Chatva Lostram Yachate. That someone who gives up Ekadasi and other Vaishnava Bratas and starts doing some other Brata. For example, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told the devotees not to perform Shrad. I don't know, Abhinash, you come from a Hindu family, I think, yes? Yeah. If you were to tell your family members or somebody that we shouldn't do Shrad, it's like, oh my God, isn't it? I don't know what kind of family, but most Hindu families, that's just like, that's like the worst type of thing you could try to say. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was very, very upset with Vaishnavas, with initiated devotees, when they were doing that Shrad, the ceremony for their departed ancestors. He said, because if you're chanting the holy name, it's not required. And he was very, very upset when one of his senior disciples performed the Shrad ceremony. As anybody from India can tell you, it's not an easy thing to give that ceremony up because it's so much pressure from the family. So if you give up that Ekadasi, but you take on some other bratas like the Shrad ceremony or other things, then you're giving up a jewel that you have in one hand, and you're giving it up to take hold of a piece of mud. Chatva, Maharatnam Chatva, you're giving up that Maharatna, and Lostram you're just having this Lostram, you're having a handful of mud. That's all that you've got. So Narottam Das Thakur is speaking very heavily here, right? That if you want to worship Radha and Krishna, and this song is all about how to worship Radha and Krishna. What is bhajan to Radha and Krishna? What is nishta bhajan to Radha Krishna? Therefore, Bhaktivinoda in Jaiva Dharma, in chapter 5, he said that when karmis who follow the path of karma, put this on the board also, it's a really beautiful statement. It really makes things clear, I think. Very simple statement. When karmis observe that who are following the path of karma, observe Ekadasi, it eradicates their sins. Whereas when bhaktas observe Ekadasi, it enhances their Hari Bhakti. It's a huge difference, and we should understand this difference. We want Krishna Bhakti. If we want Krishna Bhakti, we have to be a kantik. Vyavasyatmika buddhi eke hakurananda. Bahusakahyananta sabuddhiyo vyavisayan. Krishna in the Gita, he says that those persons who make progress on this path, they're ekantik, they're one-pointed. And other persons, he says, they're bahusaka, who are doing other different things. So Narottam is saying here, Anya Brata, don't do any other brata. And then he says, Anya Dana, don't give any other charity. So someone who's aspiring for bhakti should also give up other charities. And that's also a radical thing. In the Mahabharata, this whole chapters devoted to Bhishmadev speaking to Yudhishthira Maharaj about the glories of giving charity, and especially giving food grains, giving cows. And so many, it's such a very, very pious thing. But what does that mean? Anyadana means we shouldn't give other charities, but we should give gifts to Krishna. We should give gifts to the Vaishnavas. But we should avoid giving things to unworthy persons. In the Ad Iriha Samuchaya, there's a nice verse, Tasmad Vishnu Prasadaya, Vaishnavan Paritoshaya, Tasmai Deyam Tato Grayam, Sacha Puja Yatahayam. That if we want to satisfy Krishna, Tasmad Vishnu Prasadi, if we want Krishna's mercy, we want to satisfy Krishna, Vaishnavan Paritoshaya, we have to satisfy the Vaishnavas. Therefore, we should give charity to the Vaishnavas. We should accept gifts from them, because Krishna says, those Vaishnavas, Sacha Puja Yatahim, they're as worshipable as myself. I've been reading quite a bit lately from Navadas's Bhakti-mala. And it's very interesting to me. It's a book which probably most devotees, if they started reading it, they would get a stomach ache, because there's a lot of strange stories, which maybe we don't even appreciate so much. But Bhaktivinoda quoted the book in his autobiography. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta also quoted in some lectures. And in fact, the Sajjana Toshini, in one issue, they gave a list of books which are recommended for Bhakti Shastri. And the Bhakti-mala was one of them. So in the Bhakti-mala, repeatedly over and over again, it speaks about the glories of giving gifts to the Vaishnavas. And you see a culture that was prominent in India a few hundred years ago. At the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it was like the tail end of it. And even today, as Prabhupada would sometimes say, you can see just like a dead elephant, the skin and the tusk still has some value. And he said, similarly, Vedic culture is dead in India, but still there's some traces, some skin and some tusk. And we see that sometimes when you go to people's homes and they worship the Vaishnavas and they give respect to the Brahmins. Very pious people traditionally, and they understand that you should give charity to the Brahmins, you should take care of them because they're doing worship for you on your behalf to the Lord. But even more worshipable than the Brahmins is a Vaishnav sadhu. And there's so many, many stories in Bhakti-mala, and so many things you can see to this day in India. If you travel, people invite you to your home. When Srila Prabhupada came with his Western disciples, so many people were inviting them to their homes, and they were giving them all some donations to everybody, give everybody 100 rupees or something. They give everybody some gift. They feed everyone, because they had this culture to worship the Vaishnavas, because this is a principle. Tasmat Vishnu Prasadaya. If you want to please the Lord, then Vaishnavam Paritoshaya. You should please the Vaishnavas. And therefore, Narottam Das Thakur is saying, Anyadana, don't give any other charity. It's not a bad thing to give charity. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, even when he went with a group of disciples to Brahmagiri, Amarnath, and there were some lepers, some beggars, the grihastas were walking past them, and they weren't giving anything. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta stopped him and started chastising him and said, well, you think you're a big, big person because you're a Vaishnava. You don't have to give charity. We should also give charity. We can also give charity to poor persons. But if they're not a Vaishnava, personally, my feeling is if someone's not a Vaishnava, if I'm not sure they're a Vaishnava, I'll give them prasadam. And in India, many places, I like to carry prasadam with me. I give some prasadam because I've read too many articles in newspapers in India about beggars in the street who make more money than some of the university graduates. They're making 500,000 rupees a day. Sometimes some of them own property. And it's very difficult to understand who's who. And that's not so bad. What's more concerning to me is that some of them, they take that money and they buy some cigarettes or alcohol or something. It's a problem. And some places they just get some alcohol and they go home, they get drunk, they beat their wife and rape her in front of their children. And it's a very, very hellish thing. We're not helping. So I'd like to give prasadam. But if someone has tilak and they're chanting the holy name, I give them some money. That's my personal conviction. I remember once we were going on the boat across the Ganga from Navadvip. We arrived in Mayapur, and there was some man who came to me, and he was asking his son, I'm very hungry, can you help me? And I wanted to respect all the Dambasis, but I wasn't really sure about his character. He wasn't dressed as a devotee, didn't have tilak on. The way he was speaking, he wasn't glorifying Krishna or speaking about the holy name or anything. So I wasn't really sure. So then I told him in my broken Bengali that you come with me. And I took him to ISKCON Mayapur, and we brought him to the prasadam hall, and I bought prasadam for him. We gave him a big feast. So that's our principle. Mad Bhakti Puja Vyadika. Krishna says in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, the Uddhava, that better than worshiping me is to worship my devotee. So this is what Narottam Das Thakur is saying, Anya Brata Anya Dana. I'm not interested in any other brata. I'm not interested in any other charity. I just want to serve the devotees. And we know from Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita in the 17th chapter that he speaks about charities either being sattvic or jasic or tamasic. And charity that's given at a proper time and place to a worthy person, that's sattvikam. That's dana sattva. That's charity in the mode of goodness. But dana raja, charity that's done because you want to become famous, because you want to have some fruit of result, because you're thinking to get something in exchange. That's charity in the mode of passion. And he speaks about dhanatama, or charity in the mode of ignorance, as being when you give it an improper place to an improper person, or without proper attention and respect. You just throw something at them. It's a very, very nasty thing. So Narottam Das Thakur is telling us very strongly, if you want to worship Radha Krishna, Anya Brata, Anya Dana, Anya Seva, Anya Deva Puja, don't do other bratas, don't give other charity, don't do other services, don't worship other devatas. Now we hear about this in the Padma Purana, in the 10 offenses. The 8th offense is Dharma Brata Tyaga Husari Sarva, Shubha Kriya Samyamapi Pramada. For someone who's initiated, we never want to discourage pious deeds. If we see someone who wants to feed the poor, there's a lot of people who like to feed the poor in India. And sometimes some wealthy persons join ISKCON and they have this idea, we want to feed all the poor and we're going to hire some people and we're going to stick a picture of Srila Prabhupada in the kitchen and a picture of Krishna. We're going to hire some outside people who are not devotees. We'll hire them and we'll have them offer cook vegetarian things and offer to this picture. And then it's going to be prasadam. And then we're going to feed school children, or we're going to do prasadam distribution. And it's a little controversial. The way I'm describing it doesn't sound very nice, does it? But we shouldn't discourage that. They're going to do it, and because they feel this is a very pious thing to do. Perhaps because they're a little in the mode of paths and ignorance, but that's fine. Don't discourage them. Let them do the thing. But at the same time, if someone's an initiated devotee, they should understand What is a proper standard? And this is what Nautam Das Thakur is telling us here. Anya Brata, Anya Dana, Anya Seva, Anya Deva Puja. Don't do these other types of worship, give these other types of charity. And this is the same thing that Padma Purana says. Dharma Brata Tyaga Hutari Saiva Subhakam Pia Samyamapi Pramada. That if you consider some religious activities, some pious activities, like getting up early in the morning, like taking bath, like being honest, if you consider charity, renunciation, Brata Tyaga, Hutadi, fire sacrifices, doing some Agnihotra and that. All these different types of Shubha Karma, Kriya, Subha Karma, pious activities, if you consider them to be samyam, equal to the holy name, then that's an aparad to the holy name. And it's a sign, api pramada. Interesting that Srila Vyasadeva uses this word pramada. Pramada means to be inattentive. And this verse sometimes is translated in different ways. Sometimes that pramada then is given as a ninth offense. Or sometimes, because it's part of the same verse with the eighth offense, it's considered to be an aspect of the eighth offense. It could be taken either way. But if we take it as an aspect of the eighth offense, it's very interesting that it's indicating, why would you do this? Why would you consider Dharma, Brata, Tyaga, Hutari, Subha, all these things to be equal to the holy name? Api Pramada. Because you haven't been paying attention. Because you've been careless. And therefore, you're thinking that some of these other things are equal to the chanting of the holy name. And therefore, Nautam Das Thakur in this verse is telling us, Aha Krishna Boli Boli Vedana Ananda Kori. Just chant the holy name. Give up all those other bratas. They're not the same as the holy name. And again, this is a subject that we could speak about for years and years, literally. Let's look at a verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is in Adi Lila chapter 3, page 79. Koti Ashrameda Eka Krishna Namasama. If someone thinks that doing 10 million Ashrameda yagyas are equal to chanting one name of Krishna, Jay Kahi Shepasing, that person's an atheist. And Dande Tade Jama, he's going to be punished by Yamaraj. If you consider, my gosh, we should think about this in such a deep way. We were reading some things years ago from Fakir Mohan Prabhu's Diksha Guru, Karnapriya Goswami, and he said a very interesting thing. He said that why is it that people are so attracted to chanting Nishringa Kavacha or doing this thing and that thing? Why don't they want to chant the holy name? And he said that how many people drink milk? So many people drink milk. But of the people who are drinking milk, we made this point yesterday in our talk about Govardhan, how many of them are thinking about grass? We don't pay very much attention to grass. Grass is a common thing. So things which we take for granted, we don't think very much about. But something extraordinary like chanting Nishringa Kavacha Prabhu, that's really special. Doing some Vaishnava Homa, doing some fire yoga, it's really powerful. It's really, really wonderful and far out. But here, Kaviraj Goswami is saying, if you think that 10 million Ashwamedha yagyas, which is the king of all the different yagyas, are equal to the chanting of one Krishna name, you're an atheist. And you're going to be tortured by Yamaraj. So Prabhupada, in his purport, he cites this eighth offense of the holy name, Dharma Brata Tyaga Hutari Sava Subha Kriya Samavipamada. He says one should never consider the chanting of the holy name of Godhead equal to pious activities like giving charity to Brahmins or saintly persons, opening charitable educational institutions, distributing free food, and so on. The results of pious activities do not equal the results of chanting the holy name of Krishna. And he gives a beautiful verse which appears in, I think this is also in Rupa Goswami's Padyavali, and it's also in Hari Bhakti Vilas. Gokotidanam grahane kagasha prayaga gandokta kakalpavasaha yagyayutam meru suvarna danam govinda kirtana samam satam sai. That even if you do all these things, Gokoti Danam, you give in charity 10 million cows. Brahane Kagasha, Prayaga Gangota Kolpa. You sit in the water at Prayag for one Kolpa. Prabhupada translates it for millions of years. Usually, we people think if I can just go and get one drop of the water from the Prayag in my head, then that's worth so much. Yagyayutam Meru Suvarna Danam. That someone thinks, oh, I'll give some mountain of charity, I'll do some great yagya, I'll give a mountain of gold that's equal in size to Mount Meru. Govinda Kirtir Nasamam Satam Sai. If you think all those things put together, Prabhupada translated, it does not earn 100th part of the merit derived from chanting Hare Krishna, from chanting one name of Krishna, from chanting just the name of Govinda. Doing all those things. You distribute 10 million cows in charity, and you do it during an eclipse of the sun, the most auspicious time. You live in Prayag, and you stay in the Ganga there for one kalpa. You give in charity a mountain of gold as big as Mount Meru. It's not equal to 100th part of chanting the name of Govinda. This is what Narottam Das Thakur his teachings. This is what it means to be a Gaudiya Vaishnava. We should understand it. Now, I'd like to turn a little bit to Kartik. And this is an interesting discussion. Srila Prabhupada wrote a letter to Jayapataka Maharaj in 1969. Jayapataka Maharaj was asking Prabhupada, what about Kartik? And is it a very important thing to do? And here's a letter Prabhupada wrote. Jai Gaur, do you want to read this? Your Guru Maharaj. You have a mic? Are you there?
Hare Krishna? Are you?
Yeah, can you see?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I didn't know if you were speaking to me. I was switching my computer and my phone.
Would you like to read this letter?
Yes, sir. You had asked about the specialness of the month of Kartik, and the answer is that it is a special inducement for persons who are not in Krishna consciousness to perform some devotional service. For persons who are doing nothing in Krishna consciousness, it is an indirect inducement to take to devotional service in earnest seriousness. Every moment is Kartik. In this connection, there's a good example that sometimes a store gives a special concession to attract new customers. But for those who are already customers, there is no need of a special sale. They will purchase at any cost if they know the important value of the goods. Similarly, those who are pure devotees do not aspire for any concession, and out of spontaneous love, try to engage themselves in devotional service 24 hours each day, 365 days every year, without any stoppage.
There's an article also by Bhakti. He speaks about Kartik and Purushottam. And he says that he speaks about how different persons perform these things for different reasons. And he says, we're doing these things for bhakti. We're not interested in something. And he says, we do these things for bhakti, and we do these things so we can continue doing these things. We chant extra rounds so that can become our norm, our normal activity. Not just that we do something special for Kartik, but for people who are karmis, who have some mentality, mixed mentality, that's some fruit of desire for themselves, they're doing Kartik for this reason. And Kartik is a very, very powerful thing. In Hari Bhakti Vilas, it said, Paropahasam Uddishya Kartike Hari Pujaya Mathurayam Labet Bhaktya Kim Puna Shradaya Nara. That even if someone does it as a joke, they perform Kartik Uddishya Parahopahasam Uddishya. They perform Kartik as a joke. They go to Braj and they observe Kartik there. That person will attain the Lord's supreme abode. And he says, and what to speak? What to speak of someone who's doing it with bhakti and with faith. So again, in the Mathura Mahatmya, Rupa Goswami Says there's many, many things we can speak about. He speaks about how we perform Kartik, because by doing Kartik, it's very easy to get Krishna Bhakti. So again, we can look back at this statement from Bhaktivinoda Thakur we read earlier from Jaiva Dharma about Ekadasi. Bhaktivinoda is saying that the karmis observe Ekadasi to become free from sins, but the devotees observe Ekadasi for bhakti. And so in the same way, people observe Kartik. And we should ask ourselves, what is my motivation for doing this? And therefore, Narottam Das Thakur is giving us this verse. Anya brata, anya dana. Give up all these other bratas and things. Anya seva, anya deva puja. Just worship Krishna. But we observe Ekadasi, we observe Kartik. They're very, very important to help us with bhakti. And if we give them up, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Sanatana Goswami, that's a great fault. But we should understand that chanting the holy name is everything. Now, I'd like to, I know we've gone a little long, I'd like to turn now to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Harinam Chintamani and do some reading here from chapter 11. Discuss this. It's very powerful what he says. Here in this chapter, he's speaking about the 8th offense of the holy name, Dharma, Brata, Tyaga, Hutari, Sarva, Subha, Kriya, Samamapi, Pramada. Jada Buddhi, he says, this is the first point he makes about it. Jada Buddhi Jana, those people who have material consciousness. Jada means something mundane or something material. Buddhi means intelligence. Jadi Buddha Jana, Jada Drabya Kalashrai, they take shelter. They're under the control of Jada Drabya Kalashrai, and under the influence of time and matter. And so they're doing some sadhana, but what is this sadhana? It's done because they're afraid they're going to die. That's their purpose in doing it. Tumita abhaya prada advitiya hari tomara charana matra bhavanarnavi tari. But my dear Lord, if someone takes shelter of you, tumita abhaya prada, there's no fear for them. There's no duality for them. Advitiya hari. He says, Tomada Charana Mata Bhavanani Tari. The only boat that your lotus feet are the only boat which can cross the ocean of material existence. And he says that you've given us so many different ways to attain those lotus feet. But a very significant statement. Say Pada Labe Jata Upaya Sujila. You've given us so many different ways to attain you. Like Kartik, like Purushottam, like Chatumasha, like Ekadasi. But Jada Bhavashai, if you're doing it Bhavashai, you're taking shelter literally of a mundane mood or a mundane consciousness, Sabajadiya Haila, then those activities become mundane. And you don't get a proper benefit for them. So what is our motivation? What is the most important Ekadasi and why? And it's not Paniva Nirjala Ekadasi, it's Uttana Ekadasi, because Uttana Ekadasi was observed by Mahaprabhu when it's done for bhakti. Ishtapurti are Yagnadika Punya Karma, Snana Homa Dana Yoga Vanasham Dharma. And he gives a list of all these different activities that you can do to do some public benefits, to do some pious things. I help feed poor people. I help to maintain a shelter for women who've been abused, for children who've been abused. Those are good things. The punya karma, snana, homa, dana, yoga, vanasham, dharma, some sacred bath, doing fire sacrifices, giving charity, performing yoga, doing vanasham dharma, doing tirtha yatra, doing bratas, different activities, pitri karma, offering shred, etc., dhyan, meditating, gyan, studying different shastras, daiva karma, performing divine activities, tapa, austerities, prayaschitta, to do some, what's a good translation for that? What do they say here? Atonement, thank you, Krishna. Vidan, doing all these, sakala ijadiya dravya, all these things. He says that they're all auspicious acts Although all of these things are jadiya drabya, they're using worldly materials. They're auspicious things. They're not bad things. And by following upaya dharya pai upaya charami, by following them, you can come to the ultimate goal. Anitya upaya chari. Chari means to give up. By giving up all these other impermanent means. And then siddha samagami. Then when you get perfection, automatically, chari, you'll give up all those other different things. Pranananda labahoy saiva siddhi sar. Jivera upeya taha suna surat sar. That the highest purnananda, the highest ecstatic bliss that we can get is chanting the holy name and serving the Lord. And this is Sarva Siddhi Sar. This is the essence of all perfection. That's the real goal of everything. So how can we get it? And he speaks about how Jada Drabya Kala Hoya Nirananda Moya, how these material objects in time, they're Nirananda Moya. There's no ecstasy in them intrinsically. But still, the jiva practices them. Then krama means it's a pathway, it's a sequence by which he can attain some perfection. There's an evolution to these things where someone becomes more and more purified. And in particular, Prabhupada spoke sometimes about how this particularly means persons who are taking shelter of the Vedic literatures. And you hear about the performance of the Shred ceremony. But then you hear about how Vaishnavas give up the Shred ceremony and just worship the Lord. And then you think, oh, wow, there must be something better than that. Or you're living in West Bengal and Durga Puja is a big, big thing. Or you're living in Mumbai, and you've got Ganesh Puja, it's a big, big thing. But then you read in the Linga Purana how Ganesh and Shiva are worshiping Krishna. And you're like, wow, that's a really fun. So those are pious things which will eventually lead someone to bhakti. But it takes a long, long time. And as Bhaktivinoda Thakur says here, only after much, much delay. It takes a long time for them to do that. So if someone has already come to bhakti, there's no harm. These things are good things. We want to encourage everybody to do these things. But if someone's already come to the platform of bhakti, then these things are a fall down. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada discouraged devotees from opening hospitals or doing this and that. And then we become confused. Well, what does that mean? We have a hospital in Mumbai. They saved my life. They gave me an emergency operation once before. And it's a very wonderful hospital. It's all Vaishnavas with prasadam and deity of Prabhupada and chanting Hare Krishna constantly. That is Varnashram Dharma. But that's not necessarily the exact mission of our movement. It's a mission of our movement to engage devotees and encourage them to have businesses and means they can maintain themselves in ways they can spread Krishna consciousness. But within our movement, our Hare Krishna ISKCON movement is not meant to open up hospitals. It's not meant to be feeding the poor and doing this thing. Our movement is meant for doing Harinam and doing book distribution, for doing Krishna Katha. But we never discourage people from doing these other things. And it's very, very good. It's very wonderful these doctors are doing these things because they have to work somehow. So why not work in a hospital with all other devotees where you can wear tilak and worship Prabhupada and there's pictures of Krishna everywhere and there's piped in lectures and kirtan from Prabhupada constantly in all the rooms. And people get so much benefit from it. But still, that's an activity which should be done. But strictly speaking, it wasn't something that Prabhupada wanted for our society. So Bhaktivinoda says that the holy name is a special category. It's different from all these other different dharma, brata, tyaga, hutari, sarva activities. Harinama o jagate dile kripa kori. Because Krishna, out of his mercy, dile kripa kori, he's given us the holy name. He's brought the holy name to the material world. Siddha labbe sista jiva laibe kavari. And the living entity can chant that name even after even after they've attained perfection. And therefore we hear in books my grandmas used to quote, the Radha Tantra, how in the spiritual world Radharani and the gopis are chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. In other activities of Dharma, Brata, Tyaga, Hutadi, etc., when you achieve perfection in your Brata, in your charity, then you give up that activity. But in the chanting of the holy name, it never stops, even after you achieve perfection. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, therefore, Upaya Haile Nama Shastra Samata, that this holy name, it's as Rupa Goswami describes in his Pajavali, what is it? It says it's the goal, and Tan me sadhyan sadhanam jivanam cha. Tan me sadhyan sadhanam jivanam cha. That this holy name is my subject, it's my goal, and it's my sadhana. It's a sadhana, and it's my life. It's my everything. So this is a unique thing about the chanting of the holy name, which is different from Dharma, Brata, Tyaga, Hutadi, Sarva, all these different punya karma things. Upaya Haila Nama Shastra Samata. So the holy name, according to all different shastras, it's the means and it's also the goal at the same time. So at this point, then I want to just turn a little bit and discuss a little about Sukriti. This is Prabhupada's purport to Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 22:45. And let's see here. Dila Purushottam, would you like to read this?
Yes.
Bhakti Thakur explains.
The Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains this point. This is bhagya, fortune, for result of an accident or something else. In the scriptures, devotional service and pious activity are considered fortunate. Pious activities can be divided into three categories. Pious activities that awaken one's dormant Krishna consciousness are called bhaktya unmukhi sukriti. Pious activities that bestow material opulence are called bhoganmukhi sukriti, and pious activities that enable the living entity to merge into the existence of the Supreme are called mokshanmukhi sukriti. These last two awards of pious activity are not actually fortunate. Pious activities are fortunate when they help one become Krishna conscious. The good fortune of Bhakti Unmukhi is unattainable only when one comes in contact with a devotee, is attainable, By associating with a devotee, willingly or unwillingly, one advances in devotional service, and thus one's dormant Krishna consciousness is awakened.
So the important point here is coming in contact with the devotee. Otherwise, we don't know what is bhakti and what's not bhakti. And therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Jagadananda Pandit, he speaks about the holy name as being just some sound like in the dictionary, unless we come in contact with devotees who are chanting. So this is what Narottam Das Thakur is teaching us. And it's the same point which Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Bindu. He speaks about how this association with the devotees is so very, very important. And when he speaks about how someone may do bhakti, but if they're not doing it in association with devotees, then it's indriya vyapara. It's just engagement of the senses and sense objects, or he calls it indriya prerana, something which is induced by the senses. And he says that that's sadhana bhakti. It's not a bad thing, but that's not Sudha bhakti. Sudha bhakti means when we act under the guidance of Guru. And if we don't have guidance from Guru like that, then what will happen to us? Then we'll fall prey to these different activities and thinking that doing some different brata is so important, feeding the poor. Well, Prabhu, it's really important. We need to do this. It's good PR. If we do this thing, people are going to be impressed or be helpful and happy with our movement. And we distribute prasad. And Srila Prabhupada wanted all the temples to distribute prasad, but he didn't want people just to hire some outside persons for it. He wanted devotees who were chanting regularly to be cooking that prasadam, offering that prasadam, and distributing that prasadam. And while they distributed, ideally Prabhupada wanted kirtan to be going on and book distribution to be going on. So this is the essence of our movement. Let me share with you another statement I like very much. This is from Prabhupada's purport, the fourth canto of the Bhagavatam, chapter 24, text 15. Let's see here. Mukunda, are you there? Avinash, would you like to read this after being initiated?
After being initiated and receiving the orders of the spiritual master, the disciple should unhesitatingly think about the instructions or orders of the spiritual master and should not allow himself to be disturbed by anything else. This is also the verdict of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who, while explaining a verse of Bhagavad Gita, Vyavasayatmika Buddhir Eke Ekak Kuru Nandana, Bhagavad Gita 2.41, points out that the order of spiritual master is the life substance of the disciple. The disciple should not consider whether he is going back home, back to Godhead. His first business should be to execute the order of his spiritual master. Thus, a disciple should always meditate on the order of the spiritual master, and that is perfectional meditation. Not only should he meditate upon that order, but he should find out the means by which he can perfectly worship and execute it.
Let's look again at the sentence I just highlighted. The disciple should not consider whether he's going back home, back to Godhead. Wow. His first business should be to execute the order of his spiritual master. That's the whole focus of a devotee. That's the purpose of Guru. The purpose of Guru, as we often quote in Maria, have a saying, Konafunka Guru, that Guru is not just someone who comes and spits in your ear, but the purpose of Guru is to give some instruction. And so the disciple gets that, it's mercy he's getting from Krishna through that sadhu. So that's his first business, to execute the order of his Gurudev. And even whether he goes back to Godhead or not, he's not concerned about that. That's the essence of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And therefore, Natandas Thakur is giving us this verse. We'll go ahead and finish up looking at this again. Anya brata, anya dana, nahi karun vastu jnana, anya seva, anya deva puja. Just give up. Anya brata, anya dana, anya seva, anya deva puja. And what do you do then? Ha ha Krishna boli boli. Vedana ananda kori, with great ecstasy and happiness. And one point is this happiness comes because you become one-pointed. But if you're not one-pointed, then there's no happiness. These other things will eat away at you. And just like a disease takes away the strength of a person, these things will eat away you like insects eat away at wood. If we're doing some other anya brata, anya dana, we're not focusing. We just focus on the service of Gurudev, instruction of Gurudev, and the hell even with whether or not I get liberation. Just let me chant the holy name. Let me serve my Gurudev. And we should also, Prabhupada encourage devotees many times, and my Guru Maharaj spoke many times too, that why not this lifetime? Why not one lifetime? Go back to God. Because he saw sometimes devotees might be becoming lazy. That, oh, I don't need to I don't need to work very hard. I can just take birth again, and it's okay because I'm initiated. And the real important thing is, Prabhu, is that I want to chant the holy name and serve my Gurudev. But maybe we're saying it with our lips, but it's not really very deep. And therefore, Prabhupada said, no, this lifetime, don't be lazy. Don't take birth again. We should understand. Mani mora nahi jena buja. I don't have any other conception. This is my only conception. So I really hope that this disturbs some of you today. That's our purpose sometimes. Let me read some of the comments and then we can take some discussion if devotees like. Let's see here. I like Leela Purushottam's comment, speaking how this thing is a very personal instruction from Krishna, Sarva Dharma Parityaga, I think you're referring to. Thank you. And Gaunitai Prabhu is commenting, in Krishna's preaching to his father, Nanda Maharaj, very useful questions. before we join any performance, worship, or yoga, it's good to ask these questions. The person who acts with knowledge gets the full result. But one who acts without knowledge doesn't get such a result. Therefore, Krishna says, please let me know, what is the purpose of the sacrifice we're going to do? Is it just a popular ceremony? Let me know in detail about the sacrifice. Jiva Goswami in Gopal Champu, he says that Krishna asked him, he says, is this a Vedic sacrifice or is this just some village thing? And Nanda Maharaj answered him, he said, well, we've been doing it for so long, we consider it to be practically like a Vedic sacrifice. And as Goni Thakur was pointing out, we should think about it. And this, in essence, and for those of you who haven't seen our Katha yesterday, it's very much about the subject. I'd recommend you do that. I can share the link with you if you want. It's in our WhatsApp group. This is very much the subject we were speaking about yesterday. Why Krishna's saying, give up this worship of Indra, even though worship of Indra in respect to Indra is a very religious thing. But there's something higher than that, and that's pleasing Krishna. Okay, let's go through some of the comments real quick. Jai Gaur, at 11 o'clock, he's going to have to switch to listening from the phone. He'll be preparing to push the Harinam card out. Wow. So we should all, it's said in the Bhagavatam that 3 persons share a fruit of something equally. The person who orders it, the person who does it, and the person who supports it. Was it William up at the Tatphalam? It's in the prayers of Prithu Maharaj. So we want to support what Jai Gaur is doing, what the devotees are doing there in New York City, because we want to be part of that Harinam. Harichandra Prabhu's comment: how can I properly understand that bhakti is independent, and at the same time, by associating, by observing Ekadasi, I get bhakti? Well, good question. Bhakti is independent. Krishna is independent, but Krishna becomes controlled by bhakti. And if we're doing Ekadasi, or if we're performing these activities of bhakti that we've been given in our line of our devotional line by our acharyas, if we're practicing those things for the purpose of bhakti, then Krishna becomes controlled by those things. And that's why we're doing sadhana bhakti. That's why we're chanting Hare Krishna, not just because it's a pious activity, not just because we'll get liberation, not even just because you're going to get Krishna praying, but because it'll control Krishna and because it's given by Krishna's dear devotees. Because Krishna likes to hear the sound of his name chanted by those intimate devotees. So we're doing those things in that mood. So it's independent in that way. And in Bhakti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami explains how Krishna does not give mercy. Very shocking thing he talks about. He says, because someone can give mercy when they suffer. And when you suffer, when you understand the pain of someone, you're living in Ukraine and your house is bombed and your family is killed and you barely escape with your life, you can understand the pain that other people are going through who are in that same situation. I can't understand that. I've never been through that. And so Jiva Goswami explains because Krishna is Satchidananda Vigraha. He's full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. There's no unhappiness. He's never unhappy. He doesn't know what unhappiness means. He's never experienced it. So Krishna can't give mercy. But Krishna does give mercy. Hey, Krishna Karuna Sindhu, he's an ocean of mercy, but he gives that mercy through his devotees, who are Krishna Kripa Patra, who are the embodiment of Krishna's mercy. I hope that's helpful. Jai Gaurav commented, Prabhu, you quoted that one should not consider whether he's going back to Godhead, that he should simply fulfill the order of the spiritual master. But the most important and emphatic instruction of Guru is to get prema and go back to Godhead. So is it just that a mental adjustment is made and externally the same sadhana is being performed? Please say something like this on this if you like. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily the most important and emphatic instruction. It may be in certain ways. Prabhupada gave us Back to Godhead magazine. He wanted devotees. He wanted everyone to go back to Godhead. He wanted us to have a desire to go back to Godhead in general. But I don't think that was Srila Prabhupada's primary desire. I don't think that Prabhupada would say that's the highest thing. And he didn't say that in that purport reading in the fourth canto. Higher than that is to serve the spiritual master. And in that case, Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Va Jagadisha Kami Mama Janmani Janmanishri Bhagatat Bhakti Vitakitwe. That's really Sudha Bhakti. And this is our line to teach that level of bhakti, which even rejects in liberation. It has no interest in liberation. But at the same time, for certain people, Prabhupada stressed it, just in the same way that for many of us who have so many material desires, Prabhupada spoke heavily about sex desire and sex life, because that was a required thing. And he spoke about how we're not this body, because that's important for us to hear. So it's also important for us to hear that we should go back to God, that we should have a desire like that. I think perhaps Prabhupada saw in India, there's a lot of people who want liberation. But in America, people just want sense gratification. And in Europe, that's the general thing. He comments, Madhavananda Prabhu is very subtle. He chastises me to glorify me. In that way I get purified. Leela Purushottam Prabhu. You want to read your comment, Leela Purushottam Prabhu? You get to hear your sweet voice.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, that was to your last point. That I just wonder, what's the state of our consciousness, heart, mind, whatever, that simultaneously live that great determination, like I want to do anything and everything in my means to whatever, please Krishna. But without kartitva abhiman, without that pride that I am the doer, I'm chanting so many rounds, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, like being really in that consciousness of yeah. So that's my and then I suggested that probably the explanation would be because I only today I managed to listen to that lecture, which I really want to thank you so much for the whole series of Gambhira Bhajan. It's highlight of the year for me.
Your session, I was looking for you. I figured you were busy.
What?
We missed you.
Yeah, I was also, yeah, it was so unfortunate. we spent the afternoon in the hospital with Ratnamala because she broke her leg. So it's not that serious as Krishna Kund went through. It's light thing. It wasn't too but I just couldn't attend. It just it was crazy.
She's better now?
What happened?
She was stepping down from a chair. She was cleaning the windows, and she was stepping down from the chair, and she stood on her sandals, on her slippers, and like that, yeah, and she fell down, and the bone broke actually.
It broke.
It only cracked. It didn't move aside, so it only cracked, and then she has a gips. And
So
anyway,
now you get a chance to do some Vaishnav Seva and wash dishes and cook and.
yeah, I have a lot of. I'm quite overwhelmed these days. Yeah, so I listened to that lecture today. I was it's really it's so wonderful, and I'm so glad for being able to go with you, with your guidance, with your help through all those conceptions of Gaura's bhajan in her separation, and then so that was my like inner suggestion that maybe that would be a clue to that wonder, to that question, how these two things goes together, like what is the inner experience, like really, because usually this determination on the conditional level we would rather associate it with the fruitive mentality. I will do that much and I will achieve that result, and in that sense, and that's doesn't sound like bhakti to me. So how do we connect these two, like being fully dependent on the Lord's will, on the Lord's mercy, not perceiving ourselves as the doers, as kartas in the devotional service, not perceiving devotional service as some ordinary material activity, and simultaneously experience this great determination, this dridha vrata. That's
I like your conclusion that you offered. I agree with it. We should go to the Gambhira and do bhajan with Sri Damodar and Roy Ramananda.
It's not too ambitious.
And we should give up. At least we should start consciously understanding that everything we do should be for Krishna's pleasure. I'm hearing a class, it's for Krishna's pleasure. I'm watching a drama, it's for Krishna's pleasure. I'm taking prasadam. It's very difficult. That's why when you take prasadam in Gaudiya Mat or in the Babaji's or the Tota Gopinath or something, before they begin, they say sadhu sabadan. Sadhus, be careful. Yeah. Don't just eat for your tongue, and, trying to enjoy. And they all start together and they finish together because this is prasad seva that they're doing, not just something for the tongue. Very difficult for us. And Srila Prabhupada sometimes too, he said, I also have a tongue. He was saying, and thank God, if Prabhupada would have come and been like Jai Gaur, who's fasting this whole month and doing crazy things, if Prabhupada would have been like that, nobody would have joined. Prabhupada gave us globjamins. Prabhupada gave us paneer and beautiful sabjis and puris and things. And it was that sense gratification. But we should understand that ultimately we should take that. When Prabhupada would take prasadam, generally he would not speak and he would just sit by himself. I don't do that very often. Even when I'm with Naranjan Maharaj or someone, it's wonderful for me to sit and talk with him, and that's what I'm used to. We usually talk when we take prasadam. But my Guru Maharaj was also quiet when you take prasadam. And I see many sadhus like it because they're concentrating. That it's not just for my pleasure.
That was my great times at Goloka Dham to accompany you on the prasadams. I'm glad for your habit to have company for prasadam.
A good fortune to get your association.
Yeah, so that was my. Still, I would like to one day experience it, being really, because then otherwise we could. That's the point. Like when I consider for myself, like how to get rid of that karta abhiman, that doer mentality, then I on the other side of the scale, I have to fight with being like lenient, lazy, not attentive, and like, oh, it's in Krishna's hands, and well, what can I do? What does Surpress achieve? And words like this. So that's.
It reminds me of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's famous words at Radhakund when he started speaking about something about Krishna Lila, and he said, "You should know such a thing exists." I love that. I think really that's what my Guru Maharaj was trying to do with us too. It wasn't that he explained all of Manasiksha and all of the Goswami's literatures and all about Raganuga Bhakti and Ujjwala Nilamani. He was giving something, just you should know such a thing exists and look for it up there. So we should know it's very hard for us. How can we, if I'm covered over by the modes of nature, how can I do bhajan for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna? I'm doing everything for my pleasure. And therefore, Krishna in the Gita, we were reading those verses in 17th chapter about charity in different modes of nature. When we're under the modes of nature, we'll be doing, and we're thinking, yeah, what I'm doing is really advanced bhajan because of the numbers. Because I'm chanting this number of rounds, or I'm chanting this amount of time. And it's good, we should chant more. Should chant more time and things, but it's not just about the numbers. And Bhaktivinoda makes it very clear in Jayavadar and Harinam Chintamani. The most important thing is our bhav. So we hear about this, And we hear it continually. We try to associate with devotees who are doing bhajan like that. And it's a little difficult when you come to school and you go to school because you're interested to learn something, and you go there and you find a room full of a whole bunch of like children who are like 3 to 5 years old. And Lila Purushottam, you know what children that age, what it means, right? If you have about 20 such children all together, you go crazy. They're all just screaming and this and that and the other. But it's necessary for them to come together. It's necessary, you need to teach them and things. But who wants to associate with children like that? Even the mothers and the parents, they need a break sometimes. They need to have somebody else take care of it. So we need to have a movement where we invite everybody to come. But those new people are like those small children. And if we only associate with persons like that, we'll go crazy. And therefore, it's important that we associate with more advanced devotees.
Thank you so much for your association.
Thank you for your association, Prabhu. Avinash Prabhu, let me introduce Avinash again. He's just joined with us the first time today. And he's from the sacred land of Jagannath Puri. And what were you saying? You're from Hyderabad? Is it you're living in Hyderabad now? Yeah. So anyway, Avinash is our guest, so everybody's Lila Purushottam, you have to be nice to him. Would you like to read your question, comment, Prabhuji? Or should I read it? You can make some comment. I can go ahead and read it if you want. How can Dharma Samstat situation be perceived as? You quoted the Karna Parva of Mahabharata. The Muni had taken a vow to speak the truth. However, in that situation, if he had not spoken truth, it would have been adharma. And because he spoke truth, they slaughtered the innocent man. Resultantly, he went to hell. Well, in that situation, if he would have told a lie, that would have been dharma. The lie would have been dharma. And this is the point that Mahabharata is making, because people tend to, all over the world, and not just in Hinduism or Vedic literatures, but also in Christian and Islamic traditions too, people tend to see things in a very external way and just want to have rituals and things that they do. And they have rules. Oh, I'm supposed to be honest. I'm supposed to give this money, like this and this. But the Mahabharata is shaking us up. It's telling the story of this rishi. Oh my God. By telling the truth, he was doing adharma. So what is dharma and what is adharma? We should really think deeply about it. How can one discriminate properly as to what is right and what is wrong at every moment? Therefore, we have to have association with Guru. And association with Guru is not just, again, Konafanka would mean someone who just spits in the ear the mantra and we have some initiation, but it means that Guru Mukha Padmavakya Chiteti Koriya Aikya, that I bring the words of my Gurudev into my heart and they reside in my heart. And I'm always considering them. And then what happens, as we've spoken about in some other sessions, that disciple becomes a part of the Guru. It becomes a kind of expansion of the Guru. Gurudev enters into that devotee. And therefore, it's so important to have close association with Guru and to hear from him in a close way and to render service to him. Then that thing can come to our heart. And then we'll be able to understand. Without that thing coming to our heart, Jiva Goswami quotes Brahma Vivarti Purana, Tabat Karmas. So Molinam. Anyway, the heart becomes contaminated. The Satya Buddhi, it's not coming to my mind. A few verses of this. But you won't have good intelligence. You won't be able to understand what is right and what is wrong until we have that intelligence from Gurudev. And so we pray to Gurudev. That requires some relationship. Is that helpful, Avinash?
Yeah, Prabhuji, like what I had a doubt was, until we are able to imbibe the words of Gurudev in our heart, till that stage we are in a contaminated state in the meanwhile from the process of contamination to imbibing the words of Gurudev in our heart. We are still undergoing a cleansing process. So in the meanwhile, if we are facing some bewildering situations, or we are facing some like Dharm Sankat type situations, like how this Muni had faced, in that situation, like even though we are receiving the instructions of Gurudev, but we may not get at that particular moment the discrimination power to discriminate what is right and what is wrong. So in that situation,
as long as the heart is contaminated, then the Satya Buddhis, we can't understand. We don't have a good brain. And therefore, Gurudev gives strong rules. Prabhupada gave strong rules, 4 regulated principles. You must follow this. And he gave strict rules, and we have to follow those rules very strictly in that situation. And sometime later, ideally, we all want to come to the platform when we understand when Gurudev comes into our heart. Still, devotees should always follow the principles and the orders of Guru. But sometimes it'll come when there's an apparent contradiction between the two. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives an example that you should do your Sandhya Vandana, you chant your Gayatri mantra at the proper time. But what do you do if the Sandhya Vandana is going on? Your Gurudev is giving a class, and your Gurudev is such an elevated Vaishnava, he's giving his class. Should you just get up and walk out of the class because I have to chant my Sandhya Vandana? He says, you chant it later on after the class. You break that rule because the superior rule is there. So we'll get intelligence from that. And that's the essence of community. That's the essence of culture. You come from a cultured family, I think, coming from a Rishta, coming from a Hindu kind of background in that. Whereas devotees from the West, it's very common for us when we start practicing Krishna consciousness, we think these are just the rules, but they don't understand there's always exceptions to rules. And there's a general rule that women, they should be subservient to their husband, and they should do that. And it's a big controversy now in our society. But people who come from that culture, they understand there are some ladies like Janava Mata and others who are gurus, or even great Kshatriya ladies in the history of India. There are exceptions, and they can accommodate that because they understand the culture. So when we understand culture, it means you also understand exceptions to the rule. Not that we take an exception and say this is the rule that everybody should do like this. That's a misunderstanding that we may get in the West. But when you're actually living that culture, and I see that in Jagannath Puri, I see that in Vrindavan, people who've been living this culture, especially for many generations, one symptom of it is they understand exceptions, where exceptions should be, and they can accommodate that. Does that make sense to you, Prabhuji? It's your culture.
thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Avinash, and thank you for joining us today, Krishna. Anybody else? See, Manish Prabhu, you have something?
Hey, Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for your wonderful class again. Definitely some mind-boggling quotes I think you've shared today. I've never really heard from anyone in, I'm going to say ISKCON before, so definitely new food for thought. I had one comment and one question. And the first comment was a little bit in response to what Leela Purushottam Prabhu said about the kind of challenges we have between being the doer and then kind of having that sense of ego versus the other side where everything's Krishna's mercy. We actually had a Sangha at my house with Vedavyas Priya Maharaj, and he was explaining the hidden identity of Srimati Radharani in Damodar Leela. And he said that our spiritual life has to be somewhat based on that example, in that Mother Yashoda had to make the effort to bind Krishna, but ultimately it was Srimati Radharani who facilitated this entire Leela and actually allowed Krishna to be bound up. And so when we're doing our service or anything in spiritual life, we should definitely endeavor and try our best. But remember, the outcome is always dependent on Krishna. Whether those rounds that we've done were really sweet because we sat in front of the deities and we felt some sense of pleasure, or we sat in front of the deities and we didn't feel pleasure, the ending is always kind of due to Krishna and his mercy, whereas the endeavor is something we should always try and make. So I just thought it was really nice that Leela Purushottam brought up the same point, and that kind of what was linked
And then on the question, so I remember, and this is coming from a personal place because it's something I'm discussing with some of the leaders at the temple here in London. We've noticed, and this is not Vaishnava Aparad, it's simply calling a spade, so I don't want to offend anyone, but we've noticed a lot of kirtanis now, especially of my generation. We copy Ayendra Prabhu in the sense that it is the kirtan style, Nama Seva, Kirtan, chant. And I say we copy Ayendra Prabhu because we use that as justification for coming in the evenings on a Saturday or a Sunday and chanting 3 hours and completely ignoring other devotees or anything else, any other seva that may be taking place. But I was thinking back to when you described in, I think it was a verse from quote from Hanuman in Prema-bhakti-candrika in one of your previous sessions about how important the service is, and actually these Prema bhaktas, they don't even want the symptoms of Prema because it gets in the way of their service. And so relating that to the example of Ayendra, he would do lots of kirtan, great, and that's incredible. But equally, you would see him so many times with a broom in his hand, a jaru, cleaning the temple room, cleaning the bathrooms, doing so many other things. And then in this verse, Narottam Das Thakur is saying everything else is superfluous, almost, any other type of seva is not important. So could you help? Maybe there's a subtle element that I'm missing here between those types of activities and Nama Bhajan and how they go hand in hand, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's put it in a simple way. If we're chanting Hare Krishna, what are we doing? We're asking Krishna for service. And then if Krishna shows up and says, okay, here I am, here's some service. No. I won't accept that. I'm a very high Vaishnava. I'm only chanting. Archayam eva hareye, pujam yashradayete. I have faith in chanting Hare Krishna. I have faith. Archayam eva hareye, in worshiping Krishna. But natad bhakteshu, chanyeshu, sabhakta prakrita smita. But if I don't have faith in the devotees, if I don't appreciate the devotees, if I don't see, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta taught, the connection between Nam Kirtan and Vaishnav Seva, if I don't see the connection of those two things, then I'm a Prakrita Bhakta. I'm a materialistic devotee. And you're not condemned to hell. Something is very good. Keep chanting. It's very wonderful. We're so very happy to see that. But as you point out, there's a kind of devotees. It's another kind of mentality too. I'm chanting 1 lakh a day, Prabhuji, on my job. And it's good to chant 1 lakh a day. We may be doing that. But we should see what is the pleasure of Gurudev. And we may be inspired in our heart to chant. I think it's a very good thing to chant more rounds. But sometimes devotees are just focused on the numbers of things and seeing external things, and they're not seeing serving the devotees, being with the devotees. Kirtan is so special because the devotees are there. Is that helpful?
Very, thank you. And I think it's definitely, I like how it almost went back to basics. Like, what does the actual Mahamantra mean? You're asking for service. Like, we often miss that because we're so caught up in having wonderful and almost colorful interpretation of the Mahamantra, and it means this depth of bhakti, it means this bhava, and you can chant in this rasa and this flavor, but actually in its simplest form, it's a beggar crying.
Our hero, the hero of our society today, I think, for the holy name is Ayendra Prabhu, as you were saying. He's our hero. He's our what do you call it in Catholicism? He's our saint of the holy name. And Ayendra Prabhu was chanting the holy name, and praying for service, and Krishna said, okay, here's some service. And so the next thing you see Ayendra in a gamsha with a toilet brush instead of a mridanga or harmonium. And Krishna whispered his ear that you do that service, and he liked that service. He was only, so whatever service Krishna gives us to do, we're ready to do.
Thank you.
Leela Purushottam made some. He has a couple good comments. Okay, so one is asking if that talk by Vedavyas Priya Maharaj was recorded.
I'll have a look. I think so. I can send.
By the way, I was thinking when you said this that how pleased Maharaj must have been to do a program in your home. Oh, Because when you do a program in the home, you can speak about some deeper thing like that. If you give a class like that at the Manor or Soho or something, they may like, oh my God, it's, you know, you can't talk. You can't talk about Radharani. And it also reminded me too, some Vaishnavas, they say that Mother Yashoda was trying to tie up Krishna, and she was taking all the ropes from everybody in Braj, and it was always too short, Duyanga, 2 fingers short. And then finally, one gopi took a piece of string from her hair and gave that to Mother Yashoda, and that piece of string worked, and that gopi was Radharani. So that it's Radharani's string that tied up Krishna.
Yeah.
So Leela Purushottam also has a comment. I say, why not copy Ayendra Prabhu with the bathrooms as well? I love that. Okay. Ishwari Prema, thank you, Prabhu. Ishwari Prema, do you want to share something?
Yes. Hare Krishna. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for class. I was thinking also about this topic last few weeks because of some situation, and wanted to share something and ask you about this film and devotional service. Like when my friend came back from Vrindavan, and she was serving in some farm community and was following some authorities of ISKCON authorities, and she was sharing ideas like we try to create some farm community by some principles of holistic farming, and it is like something very economic that you cannot like plow the soil, or you cannot watering even the ground, or you can weed the grass. Like idea that every entity, and small and even in grass, it is the soul. And if we like doing this, or if, an example, if monkey is coming to take bananas, so we drive out monkeys because of our own, how to say, plans and desires, because we want more bananas. And so the question, like, what can monkeys can eat? So, and conclusion is that she's saying that how we can treat or do anything, or even planting, if we do the same, that we even killing the small animals, or if we buy like products from the shop, so this is like lying, we cannot even treat or distribute books. So I mean, this is like controversial, and of course I was thinking a lot about this, and I cannot understand, like now I'm doing so much things. So how I can do devotional service if I don't grow my own vegetables? So I don't understand if it's what it is and why it happens, why we think like this, or if it's possible, if it's practical to do this everything so economic that you grow everything, that you're not killing any entity, and you like no, like this idea. I don't know, maybe you can share something, what you think about this idea, if it's possible in Kali Yuga, and if it's so really important.
Well, several. It was a little hard for me to understand you sometimes, but I think I got what you're saying. First of all, there's a few different points I'd like to comment on. One is that we get instructions from ISKCON authorities, and sometimes we kind of roll our eyes. Oh my God, you know. But it's necessary to cooperate with the society, and so we take to cooperate and to push on Prabhupada's mission. We cooperate with ISKCON authorities. But at the same time, ultimately, as we grow more mature, we'll find it necessary to associate with like-minded persons and to have a more intimate association with someone we see as guru, who understands our heart. But at the same time, we should try to balance things if we can and still cooperate with the society and the ISKCON authorities and follow our guru. That's just a side comment. As far as growing your own food and taking care of animals and things like that, several things can be said. It's not that we're going to, you know, Jai Gore is going out in Harinam today in New York City. It's not that they're going to decide, well, let's not go out in Harinam today. Let's go buy some popcorn and feed the pigeons instead. and we're going to do this thing. We're going to take care of the animals. And that's a pious thing. It's a good thing to take care of the animals like that. But they shouldn't stop the Harinam. The Harinam is the most important thing. At the same time, we should understand, and I think it's very important, it's a little controversial. And when some things are controversial, I think the best thing to do is to take our time with it and to digest it and see what my heart has to say about it, what my Gurudev has to say about it, and not try to make a big fight about it or create disturbances. So some devotees, they'll say, Prabhuji, anyway, growing your own food, that's just nonsense. We should just do Harinam. We should all just go live in the city and do book distribution and do Harinam and never mind growing your own food and all those things like that. That's just Maya. And Prabhupada said that for some neophyte devotees or something. I don't agree with that personally. That's my personal feeling. Srila Prabhupada stressed being independent. And I think it's a controversial thing because Prabhupada used the word Varnashram. But if you study what Prabhupada said, he's not actually generally speaking about Varnashram in terms of what you hear in Manasamhita or the Smriti Shastras. Prabhupada was speaking about Varnashram, he's equating that to being self-sufficient. And why was he wanting very much for devotees to be self-sufficient? It's something he stressed over and over and over again. The devotees should be independent. Because if we're not independent, then when, not if, but when things happen, that things go south, as they say in America, when things go bad, how are you going to get food? How are we going to take care of things? And even if we have some system to get food, what kind of food do we have? We're buying milk in the West, and a lot of times it has fish oil in it. It's illegal to buy raw milk in America in most places. They homogenize it and pasteurize it. It's very, very difficult to digest. Haribo, Govinda. It's not good for us. So we need to have our own milk. We need to have our own cows. We need to grow our own vegetables. We need to be independent because we want to practice bhakti. And if we're eating all this processed food and all this nonsense things from other people, and they're controlling us economically, then it's very difficult to practice bhakti. Just in the same way, to be really blunt, it's very difficult for Vaishnavas to practice bhakti at a certain point in the institution for a lot of them, if they're going to be dependent financially on the temple. That may be there, and some devotees can do it, and I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, but the principle in general is devotees should be independent and supportive at the same time, not independent in the sense that, I don't have anything to do with Prabhupada's mission. Prabhupada's mission is my life. I want to give everything to it. But it doesn't mean that I have to live in the temple with the 3-year-old and the 4-year-olds. You know what that's like. Your mother. I don't want to live with them all the time. I want to also attract older people who are mature, and I want to have some economic basis. And having community means animals. It means children. Children are kind of like animals also. Sometimes it means having animals. It means maybe even having dogs and cats, because those dogs and cats, sometimes they're useful. Lila Purushottam, I remember a discussion we had where he was talking about the glories of raising chickens. And I said, man, if you have chickens, boy, all the devotees are going to criticize you like anything, won't understand. But he's pointing out how useful chickens are. And then if you have the chickens and you make a kind of little fence out of wire and you move the chickens around in your garden, the chickens eat all the worms and all the bad pests which are going to eat your vegetables, and they pass stool. It's really a nice thing. Never mind the eggs or whatever, like we're not in for that, but the chickens are very valuable. And those chickens also can be nice pets. You can also love them and take care of them. So community also means animals. And I'm excited. I'm very, very excited about devotees living independently and being self-sufficient. It is a great example here in Hungary of the devotees in New Brajadam. It's a big community. As a community, it's mostly self-sufficient. And what I see it's most exciting to me is devotees as individuals now They're starting to have their own businesses. And they're also growing their own food. In Mayapur, that's going on also. And when that happens and people start coming, so many people, when they come to our movement, some of them, they appreciate the chanting, they appreciate Bhagavad Gita, prasadam, the philosophy, everything's wonderful. But they look at all it and they say, man, I'm not going to move into the temple. And this is weird. You have this temple authority person and things, and some people just don't relate to that. And because of that, they don't practice Krishna consciousness. That makes me very unhappy. They should practice Krishna consciousness, no problem. When they see independent grihastas, especially, who have their own economic basis and have their own home programs and things that are very sweet, that's going to be a very, very powerful preaching. And so many artists and intellectuals will join. And you know this very well. You have a lot of friends in that kind of category. If you just tell them you should come to the temple and follow the GBC, Israel Prema, for those who don't know, I don't mean to embarrass you, but she's a poet. She's actually like a famous poet in Lithuania. If you tell your friends to come, they're not going to do it. But if you tell them, you invite them to come to a poetry reading, an art, session in your house where you have some bhajan and some thoughtful talk and some artfully cooked prasadam, especially something that you've made yourself, and you're independent financially, and you're working together with an independent community, they'll say, wow, that's beautiful. Because people don't like organized religion. But at the same time, here in the Hare Krishna movement, we say organized religion is very good. That's Prabhupada's mission. We want to support it, but we also need to survive it. There's two things. It'll kill us too, because it's so hard just having this mechanical manager. Indra's a great guy, but he's been appointed by Krishna. What's the difference between Indra and Nanda Maharaj? Well, Indra is in charge of a whole lot of demigods, and Nanda Maharaj is just the king of the small community. But Nanda Maharaj, he's appointed out of love. And his older brothers, Sunanda and Upananda, they appointed him. They said, you're younger than us, but you should be the king because you have the most devotion to Krishna. So that's the kind of leadership we want. Indra's another kind of leader, and it's also good. And Krishna loves Indra. And Krishna appointed Indra. Indari vyakalam lokam mirdayanti yuge yuge. But the problem is that Indra is a little mechanical. And he's just thinking of the institution. I'm the official demigod. I'm in charge of everything. And you guys have to follow me. And then the disease that follows that is when you start thinking, I'm the fit giver of punishment to others. Just like you're the mother. You're mom. You're like God for your little boy. And sometimes you may punish him. You may take something away from him. You may close him up in a room. You may tie him up. I don't know. You may give some kind of punishment to the child. You can do that as a mother. But even as a mother, you can only do that when the child feels that you're doing it out of love. But when we're appointed to a position and then we start thinking, I'm fit to chastise and punish devotees because I'm appointed, not on the strength of the love that they have for me, that's when the society degrades. And that's where intellectuals and artists, they see that this is a society that's just based on somebody giving orders because they're appointed, not out of love, and not attracted by them. So when we have, I'm sorry, giving a whole speech about this, but it's an important topic in my heart. When we have communities that are self-sufficient, of independent thinking devotees who are artistic and thinking, and they're applying Krishna consciousness in a mature way, that's so attractive. You please keep doing that. You're our hope.
Thank you so much for so much inspiration. Yes, organizing Namahatas often when my friends coming kirtans. Also, short question of second part, like short. If Krishna can accept the food which is offered which is using, like if you kill some small animals, if you like, I mean, if they are not pure, or if Krishna accept actually products made with the milk from this cows who are exploited.
Srila Prabhupada said that Krishna accepts that, and those cows make benefit. But if we take the mentality, if we're lazy, because those cows, as you pointed out, they're being exploited, they're suffering. And if we just say, anyway, they're suffering, but still they're going to make benefit because we offer their milk, and we're lazy in that way, I think that's an offense. If we have nothing else, then yes, take outside cow milk and offer it, and certainly the cow is going to make benefit. But so much better, so much more pleasing to Krishna it is if we take care of our own cows, or if we're supporting someone else who's taking care of cows. Because taking care of a cow, it's even harder than taking care of your little boy. You know how hard it is to take care of your boy. It's a very hard thing. You have to walk out of class sometimes because he starts crying, or he needs his diaper changed, or this or that. You have to do that thing. That's a mother. But still, your little boy, you can carry him in your arms. When you want to go to India, you can bring him with you easily. You have a cow, it's not easy to take the cow to India. And the cow has all the same problems a child has. It gets sick, it grows up, it has babies and things. And there's so much care required for a cow. It requires a community to take care of a cow. Ultimately, it takes a community to raise a child. That's a proper thing also. Is that helpful?
Thank you. Thank you.
And let me add a little something to that too. As you know, as a mother, milk is love. The mother makes it, that's her personified love for her baby. The milk of a cow is her personified love for her calf. If you take a baby away from the mother, milk will still come from her breast, but that milk, it becomes toxic because it's so full of anxiety. Where's my baby? Where's my baby? Oh my God. And if you take that calf away from the mother cow, that milk becomes toxic. There's so much anxiety and poisons which go into that milk. We don't want to offer that to Krishna if we have a choice. And therefore, Shivaram Maharaj here in Hungary, he was pushing the devotees for years. We should do cow protection. We should have protected milk. But the devotees never did it because it's easy just to go down to the store and buy some. So finally, Maharaj made a rule: no more milk to offer to the deities, no more milk for the devotees until it's protected milk. And it took a few years. I was coming to Budapest, and they were having, instead of sweet rice, they had it made out of almond milk. They were doing it for a few, and it kind of freaked me out. I hadn't seen it. But after a few years, without their milk, the devotees, they got it together. And now in New Brajadam, they're providing milk for Budapest temple, for different places. So sometimes we need a strong leader like Shivaram Maharaj just to put down the law and say no milk unless it can be pure milk. There's a lot of devotees following it. I think that's very good. But it's an individual thing. I don't want to get into a big fight about it because Prabhupada took milk that had fish oil in it in America that was pasteurized and homogenized and came from factory cows. And Prabhupada said, yes, you can offer this to the deity. But if we take that as the standard, that we should always do that, I think it's being lazy, and that's offensive. Okay. Hare Krishna. Anybody else anything? Lila Purushottam made some other comments that we read here. He says, my experience is, Lila Purushottam, thank you for this, because he's growing his own food mostly. That work in the garden can very nicely stimulate meditation in natural environment of Braj village. One very nice model is the amount that you spend on commercial milk you donate to someone who protects cows. And that's a beautiful comment. I want to ask Lila Purushottam, since we're speaking about this thing in front of him, Lila Purushottam, you've been gardening now for how many years? Growing most or all your own food, pretty much?
12.
A lot of your own food.
12 years, yeah.
12 years now. So Srila Prabhupada says that you just grow your own food. You only have to work a few months a year. And then the rest of the time you can spend for hearing and chanting. And I don't know. My experience is, even in Jagannath Puri, where we can grow year long, that it takes a lot of work. And just any comments about that? We spoke about that before. Maybe you could just share some of what you said with the devotees.
Yeah, that's these are those practical challenges, actually. These are the challenges, definitely. I can imagine that if you grow up in a farmer's family in West Bengal, you're close to that model. You know, like I remember I was once spending in Mayapur 3 months, and when we moved to the place, there were devotees who started a garden, actually. And when we arrived there, just close to the well was one little plant which had a leaves similar to the watermelon, what we knew from here as leaves from watermelon. And my wife Radhamala was like, "Oh, is that a watermelon?" And in 3 months that we were living, in 3 months, I'm saying it with the consciousness of Middle Europe, Czech Republic. In 3 months, it was 3 meters high papaya tree with this big fruits. You know, in 3 months, it's so yeah. Our temperature, our environment here, it's tough. It's tough.
What to speak in Lithuania?
Yeah, exactly. Potatoes, grains, and you're happy that you got something.
All right. So anybody else with anything? Otherwise, I think we'll go ahead and stop. It's getting a little late. So I want to thank Avinash for joining us today. Ishwari Prema, do you have something else? Your hand's still up. Do you have something else, or you finished? I think she's finished. Okay. Nobody else has anything. So next week, I think I'll be in the Budapest temple. So we'll probably have a session. I'm going to change things. Our last Sunday classes recently, there's a few of you we've been doing with Thursday, and I'm not sure what Thursday is going to happen tomorrow because we have to shift and we got a lot of things going on. I'm going to kind of reorganize our classes, especially if I go to India. We'll probably have a different time and maybe even a different day. So we'll speak with everybody about that. I'm just informing you now that that's something probably coming up. Anyway, thank you all so much for your Sangha. I'm hearing something about Narottam Das Thakur. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki, Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol, Vancha Kalpatarubhascha, Kripa Sindhu Bheva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo.